today I just wanted to put out a little message. Whenever I get this uploaded, it will be today. Time is a thing. But really, what's coming up a lot is the need for grounding. Right now is a time of grounding things into our lives. Much of the past year or two, really since the pandemic started. The pandemic, I know there's a lot of controversy around it, and vaccines, and there's all kinds of debates still swirling around the whole thing. But I think most of that misses an important, and maybe the most important part of what that was, which was an opening up of space in people's lives. Spaces that hadn't been open in a long time. Suddenly a lot of us had so much more time. We weren't running around. We weren't doing all the things that we're told we have to do in order to survive. Now, a lot of folks were still doing those things. A lot of folks were put directly in harm's way, the essential workers and so on, right? People in healthcare and so on. And that needs to be acknowledged. There's a great burden carried by a lot of folks. But for a lot of us, it was like life shut down. And we had to look at ourselves. And I think that is a lot of the reason why right now, over the past year, 2 years, we came out of that and back into everyday life and saw things differently, saw things that we didn't like, saw things we didn't want to go back to, saw things we'd rather would change. And how that's been manifesting is a lot of cutting away, a lot of deciding that, no, in fact, I don't want that. I could go back to it, but no, I'm not gonna. Not gonna accept that anymore. I'm not gonna accept that life anymore. I'm not gonna accept that way of being. I'm not gonna accept this group of people, this collective, this company, this whatever. Okay, so a lot of that has taken place. It's a lot of clearing away of old stuff. Identification of old stuff and then clearing away of it. We've been doing a lot of that work. Now, a big part of what we're doing is deciding, okay, what goes there instead? In some cases, we're still doing the clearing. It's not like that stops happening, but there's a shift in emphasis right now, in this year. Okay, what are we going to ground in? What are we going to put in place instead? And there's still a lot of stuff in the way. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of societal structures in the way. And a big part of whether or not we're going to be able to ground in what we want to see in the world and in our lives depends on our ability to continue to refuse what we don't want to see. It's an important skill that I think a lot of us have learned, and we would not have learned it except for the time of the pandemic. That was a time that taught us that in a deep way. Now we've got to keep using that skill of refusing, and instead looking for what else. In some cases, this is just looking for what else inside of us, right? Wait a minute, how do I want to do this? How do I want to provide for myself and my family? How do I want to be in the world, right? Not accepting not accepting the old rote ways of this is how you do it. And this year, it's going to cut deep. We're seeing so many structures at the national scale, at the global scale, that do not work, that have directly led to all kinds of atrocities we're seeing in the world. I live in the United States, and it's pretty much gotten impossible to deny what we're really doing, which is skimming off the top of the masses to fund a huge machine that in the end, what is it for? Dropping bombs, mostly. Blowing things up. Trashing things. That's what this is all for? That's not the world I want to live in. I'm guessing it's not the world most of you want to live in. That's a bigger shift, a bigger change, and those structures are still in place. It takes a lot of us deciding to clear that away for it to be cleared away. Where we're at right now is we've learned that we can clear things away from our own lives, and we've learned that we can instead ground in something different. And this year, we start to learn that if we get together, if we truly decide to refuse the things that we don't want to see, and with enough of us, then we can refuse those things. We saw this with the George Floyd rebellion. And it's a process, and it doesn't mean it's all just fixed overnight. But it sets us on a new trajectory. Okay? And, talking in terms of astrology, there's a big support for this right now with Pluto, which is the ruling planet of my sun sign, Scorpio. Pluto is about the underworld. It's about the dead. It's about things dying and coming back to life. The things that we thought were dead coming back around. I have a lot of thoughts and much more to say about that. Much more that has come in over the past year about that. There are old ways we can bring back in that will help us in this new world. It will all change and be different and be new. It will not look like it once looked. But there are energies there that we can pull back out and use those things to replace the stuff that we don't want to see. Ways that the state, if you will, and we have lots of states, but we have this idea of the state and the way it channels the energies of its people towards goals that aren't necessarily in line with what its people want and need, and that then directly conflict with the needs and desires of peoples in other states, right? So those are things that we can start looking at and start taking back control if enough of us decide to do it. But right now, most important is to be taking a look at our own lives and grounding in the life we want to see on a personal basis and with those close around us, with those who are choosing to have close around us. Because we've learned to say, no, I don't have to be with you. No, I don't have to be with that group of people. No, I don't have to be in that situation. We've learned to ground in other ways of being, other ways of living, other ways of providing for ourselves. That right there can explode in some pretty amazing ways, I think, if we choose it. We have the capability to organize ourselves at levels that, were unimaginable a few decades ago. Only imagined in science fiction, right? We have the capability to get together at massive scales if we choose. We've seen when we've tried to do those, when masses of us have tried to organize in those ways, we've seen that the existing structures don't like that. And we've seen, for instance, then the internet and the platforms on the internet really change over the past 10 years. They've really been channeled towards, their actual purpose from those who own them, those platforms, which is to make profit. We've seen everything channeled towards that profit-seeking engine rather than, say, human emancipation. And of course, I'm talking about Occupy and the Occupy movement a lot here, and there were occupations, all over the world back in, 2012 into 2013, 2014. So those types of things can happen again, and there wasn't enough support for them 10 years ago. Maybe there is now. I don't know. That's something we'll have to collectively decide. But again, for right now, it's important to ground in the life that you want to see for yourself and to be consistent with that. Because you can choose. You have a choice. The fear mentality that is out there, the polarizing mentality that is out there, we see it in politics, especially. We see it in religion, especially in certain regions where people's identities are extremely tied to their religion. We don't have to choose these things. We can rise above these things collectively. And it starts, though, at a personal level. So there's going to be a lot of competing interests trying to divide us this year, trying to keep us in Republicans versus Democrats, trying to keep us in left versus right, trying to keep us in this way of organizing society versus that way of organizing society, whereas we could think about solutions collectively to help everyone and rise above all that. If enough of us do that, it's going to start to call forth a different leadership, right? Because the leadership obviously has to change in this world. The current leadership does not want these things, right? So until we move ourselves in a different direction, where we're looking for that, we're looking for a different world. We're looking for different leaders who will help organize us and push us towards this other world. And some of us will become those leaders, right? That's what it's going to take. And this year's a big part of this year is that process. Grounding in ourselves, what we want to see in our lives, in this world. Refusing anything that does not look like that. Even if we can't, I can't directly refuse, right? Sending bombs all over the world. But I can not want that, and I can resist that, and be set up internally to stand against that. And if enough of us get to that point, there will come moments in time where our actions can be taken collectively. Again, we look back at everything that happened around the death of George Floyd. These things can spark in a moment, but we have to be ready for them. So, and so again, I want to bring this back around to kind of close us down to a little bit of a pushback to things I see in, in the spiritual communities. The big problem with spirituality sometimes is this desire to kind of rise above it all and detach from it all. And this has a label, spiritual bypassing, right? We can bypass things. We can bypass things personally. We can also bypass things on wider collective scales. And we have to be careful that we're not doing that. And one way that happens is through division, where, I'm awakened, I'm more spiritual now, I'm refusing certain things in my life. Yes, that's good. But we have to leave space for others who aren't at the same place in their journey, right? Who maybe we can still find ways to agree with on some of these things. Because if we don't get enough collective mass together, if we divide, then we get conquered. And there's a whole ton of us who don't care about spirituality. And that's fine. We don't need everyone to see everything the same way. We don't need everyone to view things from the same lens. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We need people seeing from lots of different lenses. What we haven't had is the ability to transcend differences and overcome differences and come together around things. Decide what's the best thing to do. Decide on solutions that don't do harm, first of all, that then go about actually solving things, and solutions that don't lead us into rampant consumerism, right? If corporations could bottle sunlight and sell it to us, we would already be on solar power. It would happen a long time ago, right? It's not that it isn't a better way. It's that they can't bottle it. They can't sell it to us, and therefore they can't control us in that way and keep a market there, right? So, yeah, we have a lot of decisions coming up. Humanity does. About what we're going to be, who we're going to be, and depending on the choices we make, even if we're going to be long term. So, I think that's it for me today. I will just add this, though, that this is not a message, not intended to be a message about fear, right? But instead, a message of possibility. There is rampant possibility right now. We're in the middle of winter in the north, and it's a time where it can be very easy. I'm feeling this week. It can be very easy to get sleepy, to hunker down, to hermit up. I'm real good at that. And that's fine. There's gonna come, the spring's coming, and Pluto is the god of the underworld, and Pluto doesn't typically come out of the underworld, but the springtime does. All the things dying in the ground right now are getting ready to spring out. And there's been a lot that has died in the past that is ready to spring out. It may take some tending. It may take some watering. It may take some clearing of earth. It may take some weeding. And so those are the things that we need to be ready to do, preparing ourselves to do. if more of us were in touch with, say, growing our own food and gardening, and some of us are, and you're probably way ahead of me on this. Now's the time where we should be thinking about, okay, what are we going to plant? Where are we going to plant? Are we going to use that same plot of land? Are we going to move things around a bit? We would be preparing already, mentally at least, if not actually doing some physical things around those preparations, getting ourselves ready. And more as we get to the warmer months, we would be doing those things. Well, it's similar, right? We need to be mentally preparing for the possibilities to come, and we're not going to know what the weather's going to be like. We're not going to know when the planting season exactly is. We just know that it's going to happen. And if we're not ready for it, then we miss it, right? And this, again, isn't an energy of fear, but just an energy, rather, of anticipation, right? We can look at these things negatively, we can look at these things positively. And what I'm trying to promote here is a positive view, right? Because some of this stuff is going to be hard. And that's a big thing also that I am concerned about. And, I have some discernment about in the spiritual community, because I do see a lot of folks in an energy of, I'm okay all by myself, in my nice little spot. Leave me alone. And I understand we all have to go to that spot sometimes. And it's good. We can do that. But if we're in a collective mode where that's where we're expecting to stay, and we think that's the point, right? That's what it's all for, then that leads to duality, right? We're stuck in a spiritualism that doesn't get grounded, right? It doesn't ground into reality and change structures, right? And, I'm primarily talking about human-built structures. Some of it literally physically, like our cityscapes, our roads and things like this, our energy infrastructures, but also social structures, right? These things can shift and change. They do shift and change. Sometimes they feel static to us because they feel too big, right? Bigger than the individual. But they shift and they change over time. They absolutely do. If we could run a big old time lapse of the last 200 years, say take a particular spot, right, where it started out as prairie grass or something, and it just comes up to, now it's a city, right? If we could push that forward enough years, it might go all the way back down to prairie grass, right? And it doesn't take that long. That's another thing we know from the pandemic time. It's amazing how quickly the rest of nature comes in when humanity leaves. It happens very quickly. So we are part of nature. We are nature. We are not separate from it. And that's, I guess, maybe a better way of saying what I'm trying to say. If our spirituality tries to separate us from nature, then it's false. We are part of it. We are in it. And cities are natural. Cities are natural because humans build them. We are a type of critter that builds cities, just like ants build anthills, bees build hives. Should we build cities? Should we remain the type of critter that builds cities? What should those cities look like? How should they change? Where should the energy for those cities come from? How can they be made sustainable long term? These are things where now we're talking about actually grounding changes into reality, right? Big things. And again, if we're not aligned to what we want to see beforehand, then stuff gets away from us, and there are power structures in place powerful people in place who already have plans, and I guarantee you they're not the plans that most of us want to see. I guarantee it. Those are not the plans most of us want to see. We all know that. The only way we're going to start shifting it back the way that most people want to see things go, where our technology is serving human beings, where human social structures are about taking care of human beings. The only way we're going to do that is by first aligning, getting to a true north, right? Of what do we want to see there? What is the world we would like to see? And as we start to express that and look for it and refuse anything else, we can get there. Over time. This is a project of that's been going on, and it's going to go on. It's decades. It's not the snap of fingers, right? And again, that's if we're in a mindset of either oh, I'm spiritual now, so everything's just going to change overnight. Well, no, it's not. It's not. It's not going to just change overnight. In some ways, we can have a period of time where things feel like it changes overnight, sort of a sea change moment. That is possible. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take people digging in and resisting certain things and throwing their energies into new things. It's not just going to happen just because I'm healing on the inside. I mean, that's great. Good. It's not just going to happen. Okay? It's going to take people doing things. It's going to take me doing things. It's going to take you doing things. It's going to take all of us doing things. And choosing not to do things that we used to do. They're part of an old world that we don't want anymore. It's going to take all that. All right? And we can. We can do that. All right. Be in peace. Much love to everybody. Bye.